let's start. Okay, tarot card number 6. So tarot card number 6 is the first like situation. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you're introduced all of the players. You know, number 1, 2, and 3 represent the 3 primary forces. Yeah, father, son, and mother. But you also have the Christ there is symbolized, is sort of left out in that equation because it's just a different sort of teaching. The Egyptian teachings are completely different. They're Christic in their own way. There's a lot more emphasis on Ra, the father, in their teachings, than just the sun itself being the symbol of the Christ. And then the 4th one, which was a few weeks ago, which was the Emperor, which is the being, our being. Our internal being, our real being. And then number 5, the law, which is kind of funny because that gets introduced. You introduce all of the parts of the being and then karma, if you know what I mean, which makes a lot of sense if you live in this world and you're actually conscious of that. But otherwise, yeah. So that was all the players. Now we start with the first situation. So the first situation, the tarot card number 6, the first test, as it were, is definition. In the Rider-Waite tarot, this card is called the Lovers. Yeah. And it's an interesting card. We'll talk a bit about why it's specifically called the Lovers and why it's related to love, even though in the Egyptian tarot, it's much more intense, as it were, if you see what I mean. So in the Egyptian tarot here, we're presented with this fork in the road. Yeah. So let's just go through the card. At the top of the card, we have a Master of the Law. See that little feather? That's the same feather that you see on when you see the picture of the heart being weighed up against the feather, that is the feather. Hard to get this just right. Anyway, shaky foundations. But yeah, so what we have there is the feather, and then the heart is weighed against the feather. And so what we see here is this little feather symbol above his head. If you see that in the tarot card, it represents one of the masters of the law as a judge, like judging the person. And so he here forms a superior triangle with his bow, which represents the 3 primary forces that we were just talking about before. So that's the superior triangle. And then he is aiming here at this woman. And so in the situation, the card is a very interesting situation because the man is actually plunged into the waters, meaning obviously that this is a sexual decision. It's a sexual card. Yeah. And of course it is, because he has to choose here between 2 women. On one side, you have the female adept. You can see she has the little snake representing that she's awake, that her fire is awake, that her bodies are created. Yeah. So she is a female adept. I probably should have written that. Female master or female adept. And on the other side, you have the Medusa. And it's interesting, you see a lot of symbolism here. She's got long hair, the Medusa has short hair. Long hair is often a symbol of chastity, internally speaking, like Samson is a very good example. All his force came from his chastity, his long hair. And then you have the short hair. She is dressed modestly, whereas if you see here, the Medusa is actually completely see-through. You can see her entire body. Avert your eyes, young man. You need to work upon your lust. Come. Do not allow these impressions. They'll ruin your nights. You're going to have to do at least a half an hour of samsar for every time you look at this card. And then, I remember when I was a kid, I was like, whoa, look at all these sexy ladies on the Egyptian tarot, because I was brought up a Gnostic, yeah, 100%. So I used to play with these cards all the time. And whenever I was young, I was like, oh, look, naked people. So, anyway. But I find these cards are quite tasteful and are quite simply done and actually don't elicit much lust, you know what I mean? Unless you're like, what did Samael describe? That as a man, all you need is a mop in a dress, and that's it. You can't handle it, you know what I mean? And if you're set off by a mop in a dress, then yeah, you need to be careful with the tarot cards. But I will say I have noticed that the Glorian ones are a little voluptuous. They're all like Hispanic chicks, so they're all kind of like short with massive breasts. Like, it's kind of funny. Look at the Glorian tarot. They're all very 3-dimensional, and I'm like, that's very intense. You know what I mean? I feel like I'm at Mardi Gras when I read their tarot. But anyway, that's my own personal thing. I like the Egyptian one. It's quite simple. So here he is, and he is confused. Yeah, I'm talking Spanish. He's confused. Yeah, and he looks here. And he's actually got the left hand over the right, which is the wrong way to salute, is the wrong way to pray. One should pray with the right over the left. If you're not going to pray like that, then one should pray with the right hand over the left hand, which is a representation of choosing the right path over the left path in the world of duality. And so he's got the left, so he's confused, and he's aiming towards the correct path, so he's aiming towards the female adept, but he's looking at the Medusa, and as I said, it's a sexual thing. So in the waters there too, we see the negative triangle, the opposite triangle, which if we look on the Kabbalah is the one at the bottom, Hod, Netzach, and Yesod. It represents the three traders. Yeah? Well, I mean, technically speaking, let's not go there. I don't want to go through that right now. Whether or not ill will is represented by, I don't want to go through that right now. Representative Yesod or Tiferet. Ever thought about that, kid? I mean, ill will, it should be Tiferet, but then sexual as well, and it's supposed to be the lower triangle. So, what? Anyway, so, but let's not go through that right now. We'll do some advanced lectures on Kabbalah in the future, and we'll talk about that sort of stuff. Not everything always fits perfectly. Okay, so, yes. So here we go. We have this first choice. The man has to make this decision, and obviously it would be the same. If it was a woman, it would be two men. This is a decision, I mean, things are getting pretty hairy nowadays. Because that could be like a guy. If you're a guy, that's definitely the wrong choice. Do you know what I mean? Maybe that's why it's got short hair. Anyway, what's actually more likely here is, what you have here is this nice young lady, you know what I mean? She's dressed well and she's interested in him, and on the other side here, you've got this lady and, she's got a spirit animal. She knows what crystals align with her perfectly. Yeah, she likes going to the festivals, you know what I mean? And she's really interested in you, and she feels like you have like a soul bond connection just for tonight. And, this, and that where you guys met at Rainbow Serpent Festival, it's definitely a deep connection that you guys need to explore. And this is just such a perfect example of that. Because I've heard this story like so many times. The guy's like, that's it, she's my soulmate. I just felt this immense connection. We're supposed to be together forever. And I'm like, are you sure about that? You sure about that? What about the woman you're already practicing alchemy with? Or what about, you know what I mean? This happens like all the time, And this is what we have here, yeah? Now, I'm not going to do a whole lecture here about loose women. That's not what I'm talking about at all. What I'm pointing out here is the guy. He has to make a serious choice. He has to make a serious definition. And he's bringing that to him. Do you know what I mean? If the guy was a serious guy, well, he probably wouldn't be at Rainbow Serpent Festival talking to India or, I'm trying to find a whole bunch of names, a whole bunch of names that are like countries, Eastern country names, or ocean or whatever, Uma, all this sort of stuff. I wouldn't be talking to her because I just wouldn't be in that situation. Do you understand what I mean? I wouldn't have allowed myself to get that far. And so this is the thing. So this is why indecision is written upon the card, because if we want to walk the esoteric path, we actually have to make choices. It's quite interesting. People usually talk about balance, and they, I remember, I don't know how to say this without it coming out as really rude, but I remember this meme, and it was like about and it was like, it was the first time I was back on Facebook in quite a long time. And it was of like a girl sitting in like a yogi pose, like you see those all the time, those nice pictures, like the sun's behind her and something. And it's like in a balance, in a peace, all this sort of stuff. My chakras are aligned. And it said all that, and it said during the week. And then it was like weekend, and it was just her, and she was like just stuffing macas into her thing and like organizing to have some random sexual encounter with just some guy that's right there, and it was, what's your name again? And it said something pretty derogatory, something on the weekend, thing during the week and this on the weekend. And it's interesting because that's like that's really how it is right now. Do you know what I mean? This is so common, You know, like, oh, I don't eat microplastics. You know, I don't do all this sort of stuff. I'm very careful with my body, and my body's a temple and stuff. And then on the weekend, it's like 3 a.m. and you're at bloody Lismore Macca's. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like, and this is what I'm trying to say. Like, people do this all the time. They sort of, we act as though it's like, oh, yep, I'm balancing myself. But in reality, what I'm actually living is a completely undefined life. I'm just swinging between extremes, you know. And Dante Alighieri puts these people in like the worst place ever. But Dante Alighieri puts the people like not even in hell. They're just living in the vestibule. So like the antechamber of hell, where there's, let's say Inferno. In the vestibule antechamber in the Inferno, you have the people who never, he said, what is it, who never made a decision because they were so worried that by doing absolutely anything that they're missing out on doing something else. And this is a sort of thing. It's like we live constantly from one side to the other. It happens with Gnostic people as well. You know, I'm trying to sort of, I do all my nice meditations and then I go and watch violent television. You know, I do, again, same thing. I spend a day trying to, you know, organize my mind, and then I spend like 2 hours scrolling nonsense on my phone, you know, looking on Instagram or something. And what happens is it prevents us from actually moving forwards. So even I can be doing all the practices, but I lack definition. I lack actually putting all of my eggs in one basket. And we're always very afraid of that nowadays. It's like we've been sold that very strongly for a long period of time now, that to put all your eggs in one basket is like only the thing like an idiot does. Do you know what I mean? Because then they might all break. But the reality is that's actually the only way to actually succeed on the path, is to actually put all your energy into one thing. Because if we disperse our energies, then what happens is that the amount of energy I have every day, like the amount of energy I have to actually fulfill a spiritual purpose, if I just disperse that constantly, then what will happen is I'll never get anywhere. So that has to do with solar and lunar activities. Yeah. And so I really like this. This is a teaching. It is from Samael, but Raphael Arape talks about it very strongly as well, which is that there are solar and lunar activities in life. You know what I mean? Like when we come to the class, it's a very solar activity. You literally receive teachings here specifically to try and awaken your consciousness. That's the whole point. You know, okay, there's some good jokes in between and some bad jokes as well, you know. But at the same time, the majority of the class is a solar activity. We have our retreats here, for instance. We have a 6-day retreat coming up, and everyone's going to spend 6 whole days actually trying to just focus completely on the solar activities. Yeah, on meditations, awakening consciousness, on the teachings, the doctrine, getting up early to do our practices, and we actually put all this effort into a solar activity. Now, there's a middle ground as well. I'll talk about that in a minute. Not everything is solar and lunar. There are just, you know, activities that are neither solar, neither or lunar. But lunar activities, you know, are ones that actually specifically fulfill desires. So, like, as an example, you know, like when we're, you know, when you go out for a night, this is a very lunar activity. When you go out and drinking, this fulfills the lunar. It increases mechanicity. You feel sick. You know what I mean? You go out drinking, you feel sick the next day because of the damage to the body, etc., etc. Same thing with the with drugs. You feel it the next day. You feel exhausted. You feel tired. You feel sick. You feel drained. So these are things that increase. Lunar activities actually put the consciousness to sleep, yeah? And solar activities are ones that actually wake it up. And so, yeah, Raphael says you should never, sacrifice a solar activity for a lunar activity. As a good example, like on New Year's Eve, we actually have a retreat here that anyone's welcome to come to. And we started doing that specifically because of this. Because what we found was that, like, most people, when they were doing most people were for a New Year's Eve were going out and having this like really horrible night. It actually, I never forget the time it actually happened, because when we put this on, because we had we had a retreat. I can't remember, some days afterwards, and yeah, it was New Year's Eve, and we had nothing on, and so Dad and I were like, okay, what do we do? Like, and the group, I don't know. So we went down to Glenelg for the countdown, which is it's hardly a beach. It tries to do a wave. It's like, ugh, and then it just gives up. It's like, no, that's too much, and then it's just freezing. because it's like Southern Ocean. Not like around here where, you know, the beautiful oceans, you know. You can't surf down there. But anyway, yeah, so I remember we were there, and I got like vomited on. I was a kid. I was like 9 or 10 or something, and I got like vomited on by someone after the camp. Like, Happy New Year. This guy was like, yeah, like threw up on me. You know, we didn't have a car back then, so I had to catch the tram. The tram used to stop like right near our house. Well, relatively near our house. It was still a 20-minute walk. And so I had to like walk home. Like I went in the ocean and kind of like washed off, and it's January in Adelaide. It's flipping hot all night. You know what I mean? So it doesn't really matter. You just wash it off. You get wet. You just walk along. I hung my shirt out the tram window while we were going back. It's the old trams. They're like wooden trams.
What's a tram?
A tram. It's like a train, except it just runs on slower, and it kind of goes through more built up areas. That's about it. But yeah, so like anyway, we went through, and yeah, and I remember a day or two later, we met up with the Gnostic group. We said, oh, hey, what did you do? And it was like the same. Everyone was like, oh, you know, in our complex, these guys were sitting on top of the roof, and they got drunk, and they vomited in our gutter, and they were carrying on, and what did you guys do? We were trying to go to sleep, but we couldn't. And then, what did you do? Oh, we went to our friend's house, and, you know, but again, they were all drunk. And then suddenly it was just like this moment where Trent and my father were like, why don't we just do a retreat next year? Like, why don't we all just get together and do some meditations and some practices and work together and actually do something to try and lift ourselves up for the new year? Do you know what I mean? And we did. And then from then on in, we never stopped doing it. It's been like 25 years since then, because you actually want to be able to do a solar activity for that new year, you know, to actually try and, you know, to look back over. It's actually a very good moment to do a solar sort of retrospective, to look over your year and actually quite seriously look at yourself. And, you know, times we've done like in our group when we've done like chains through the new year, we've done meditations through the new year, and it just feels nicer. It's such a more warm way of doing it. Yeah, so this is a solar activity. So we're actually coming together, we're all cooperating, we're working with those more solar higher forces as opposed to the lunar forces. So we should never, the way that we start doing this is not to allow a solar activity to become lunar. So when you come to Gnosis, one of the first things you often do is actually removing lunar activities. Most people coming to Gnosis originally are sort of involved in some sort of like, a lot of people involved in drugs and things like that. And so we get rid of those. We start to remove drugs, we remove alcohol, we remove, we remove like going to doofs. You know, we're talking about doof girl here. Yeah, we remove doofs from our lives, you know. And we start to sort of try and just remove, and our life often then fills up with more neutral activities. You know, like my father would say that once, like having a cup of tea. That's a neutral activity. It's not solar, but it's neutral. You have a cup of tea, go, oh, I'm a bit bored. What am I doing? I might just have a cup of tea and just sit on the front, just look at the nice landscape here. That's a neutral activity. And so I slowly start to move some of my lunar activities into neutral activities. Yeah, like that. I might finally sort out cleaning up the house nicely, all this sort of stuff. And then eventually, over time, I then start to move them into solar activities, or I take advantage. It's very better if I say I take advantage of any solar activity. I come to retreats, classes, this sort of thing. I start reading the doctrine, etc., and this starts to give me some solar impressions. When you read Samael's doctrine, it's solar impressions. You probably noticed that his writings are very different to other people's. You know, there's a force there, and it's because of the solar force within them. Yeah, they're very, very powerful, very, very straight. So the living doctrine. So yeah, so we start to cooperate, and this starts to create a solar force within myself. So as I said, this is all choice. This is choice. So this is the indecision, and this often is actually quite a thing. You know, for people coming more and more into Gnosis, I've noticed a lot of times, like, oh, you know, can I come to the retreat? Oh, you know, I've got so many life commitments, and literally, I've had that exact thing. I said, hey, do you want to come to a retreat this next week? And the person goes, oh, you know, I was going to go to a doof. You know, I've booked it all in. We're ready to go to the doof. You know, I've got all the music. I've even got all the, horse tranquilizers ready to go, and the glow sticks, you know. I'm ready to go, man. You know, and you're like, yeah, mate, but, you know, you could just come to this retreat anyway, you know, you know, and this is often, I mean, this is a point. So this is what we call a Gnosis definition. I'm starting to define myself for this path. If I want Gnosis to succeed, I actually have to start putting my energies into it, my efforts into it. So there is, of course, in the beginning, there is always going to be a very strong fork in the road like this. Yeah. And what this represents, the reason why it's called the lovers, is these represent all of the false loves of life. Do you know what I mean? These are the false loves. If I want to experience real love, remember what Samael says, the true love, only the great beings know how to love. When he talks about the true love exists within the three primary forces, the highest parts of the being. That's real love. And if I want to experience that, I have to actually start to remove from myself all of my false loves. And it's so difficult because, as I said, I'm using the word love on purpose because they feel that way. Do you know what I mean? Like, obviously what we're talking about is actually desire, of course, but at the same time, these things feel like it's so important, you know? In the beginning, when you were younger, as I said, the doofs were so important. Going to the party was so important. You get a bit older, okay, maybe not so. But then you have a new love, yeah? For some people, coming to the class is actually just getting out of bed. And that's like a serious decision. Do you know? I've had people like that. I said, oh, we're doing the class. They go, 7:30? That's a bit late, don't you think? You think that's a bit late? And I'm like, I guess, you know? And they're like, man, I got to get up early. I can't stay too long. You're definitely finishing at 9:30, right? Definitely. And I'm like, well, maybe. I don't know. We might go a bit later. Well, I got to go to work, though. I'll be tired. I'll be exhausted, you know? And so my love of sleep has to eventually be replaced by my love of the being and the love of the teachings. Well, it starts by being the love of the teachings, and later it becomes love of the path, and it becomes love of the being. It sort of goes through this process, yeah? And so it starts with the love of the teachings. We can put that in there. Well, technically psychological work isn't there, but... And so, yeah, so slowly I start to move my loves, you know. And so, and this is hard because there's all these things that we really love about the world. You know, maybe I love my TV shows. Maybe I love my little phone time. I love my little flick time, you know. Because that's what people say, oh, I've got to get to bed on time. I'm like, yeah, okay, but what else are you doing before bed? Do you know what I mean? Well, I've got to sit on my phone for an hour and, you know, sort things out. That's just what I do every night. You know, I sort out all my things for tomorrow. I'm like, okay. And so, but again, it said we have to let go. So if I want to experience true love, hence the term the lovers, I have to start to let go of all my false loves. And the whole, that obviously then represents the ego. Yeah, in its entirety. That's what's going on. All the false loves I desire, they're the loves of the ego, the loves of the I, you know? Like, it's the same thing. We may be put up with a point where, you know, my false love becomes gluttony, my ego of eating. And then if I want to go further in the path, I have to actually let go of that because it's making me sick. And then when I get sick, I can't do anything. I saw a thing recently. It's so harsh. It was like, it was a person did a thing on all the body positive influences. You know, body positive influence, right? It just means a person who's massively overweight who, like, and I mean like huge, massive weight, telling everyone how great that is. And it was just a person going through, and it was like this, I don't know their names, but it was like this person, and he's like, yeah, you know, I love my body, all right. And then it just goes, dead, 35. And then it goes, you know, you gotta love the body you're in, dead, 42. And I'm like, whoa. And it was like really very confronting. It was like, whoa, you know, because at the moment, because of my health, I have to lose a bit of weight. And so I was like watching this, I was like, oh my God, you know. But it was like, there was about 7 of them. There was 7, like they were big name influencers. They were making money on TikTok and Instagram and on Facebook, selling themselves as just being happy and there's nothing wrong with them. And they all died from from health complications under the age of 40. And I was like, geez Louise, that's full on. They were all morbidly obese, all of them. But, you know, so that's an extreme example. But as I said, I've had the same thing. I remember when I had to give up dairy and gluten, it was a hard love. Do you know what I mean? Because I loved dairy. I love cheese platters, you know. What's the fancy term that Stuart uses? Charcuterie board. You know what I mean? It makes it sound, I don't know, to me it just sounds like Shakira, which is massively bogan. And then, it was on that. And then I remember it was a hard time for me. I didn't want to let go of it. It was like really difficult. But I had to, because I couldn't actually meditate. I was coughing and hacking all the time. I was getting sick all the time. And then, my practices were just, because every time you get sick, I'd then lose my practice regime. So I'd have like a nice practice regime, getting up at a certain time, doing my practice, doing my esoteric work. And then I'd get really sick and I couldn't do it. I was getting sick every 3 months at one point, which is just ridiculous. And not even just talking, not about physical work, that's fine. It was my internal work was suffering, because I get so sick, I then just couldn't get up early because I was exhausted and sick. So I had to actually remove my false love. My false love, which was gluttony in this case. And so the same thing, it can be the same thing in work. We talked about that in quite a few of our lectures, that the job, when the job becomes the foundation of the whole life, it becomes my false love. Even though we love to hate it, it kind of becomes like, what do you call it? Becomes like the, like the relationship you have, like whether the husband and wife, they just bicker all the time. It's like that. You love it though. You hate work, but you love work. But you hate it, but you love it. You love to complain about it. Oh, mate, long day at work. Yeah. Oh, it's tight. Yeah. Everyone says, why don't you just cut back a bit so you can do more practices and work on yourself? Do you need that much money? What are you talking about? I need that money. You know what I mean? Like, if I don't have any money, I don't eat. If I don't eat, I die. So I've got to work, 60 hours. I knew a guy once who worked 130 hours a week or something. He was one of those Indian fellas who came over, and he was working 3 jobs or something. And you know what was worse bit is he had 3 jobs. He also had 3 girlfriends, and he was married. He was engaged in arranged marriage. Yeah, I remember he fell asleep at the coffee machine once. He was just making a coffee. I looked over, he was burning the milk.
Was that just to maintain his 4 relationships? Or?
Yeah, that's right. Well, you're supposed to do it to send a lot of the money home and sort of stuff like that. But he said that basically most of what he was doing was just courting these women. And because he was with all these, I told him, what do you do in your time off? I said, do you not sleep? He said, oh yeah, I sleep 4 hours a night. I was like, okay, sometimes 2 hours a night. I'm like, okay. And then he was taking these women, because he worked just underneath the Adelaide big casino in Adelaide. It's in the railway station. And he would then taking them up to the railway station, these women, you know what I mean? He was just sort of like playing and, taking them out and showing them a good time and splashing cash. And because that he's working, he told me this was 130 hours. I remember he was working 16 hours a day, at least. I think it was more than that. Sometimes he was working 20 hours. Sometimes he'd just do like a whole thing where he just worked the whole weekend, like the whole way through. Because he was working like parking things at night time, those jobs that no one wants to do. Like he'd work as a parking attendant, 12-hour shift at night, and then come to work from there straight away. And then he'd have like 2 hours off. And he said he just slept in his car. You know what I mean? I was like, it's just, it was amazing. I mean, it was amazing, but.
Got some girls out of it.
Well, I remember because he told me about he was interested in all these women. But then, like halfway through, he then showed me a photo, and this was like the woman he was going to marry. So what's with the other women? Oh, we're just having fun. We're having fun. It's all having fun. That's all just fun. I was like, what? What? He goes, no, this is my arranged marriage. Like, I have to marry this woman. And he's like, I've known her since I was a kid. He's like, oh my God, can you get out of there? He's like, no. So he's just having fun until he has to get married. But you imagine trying to talk to this guy about spiritual studies. He hasn't got time, because he's got all his loves, his love of materialism, his love of flirting and all this sort of stuff, And so, what will happen as you start to work on yourself, you'll more and more of these forks in the road are going to come up. As you start to work and die in your ego, forks are going to come up. That's just what's going to happen. So you'll be working on you'll be working on your psychology, doing your practices, your meditations, trying to reach the void, trying to have an experience with the being, trying to have a relationship with the being. And then an ego is going to get in the way, and it's going to cause a little fork like that. It's going to say, whoa, slow down, man. Are you serious about this path? What about if we just kind of like veer off to the side slightly? There's a little lane in the side here. There's like a little, what do you call it? Like a little
stopping bay.
Yeah, there's a little stopping bay. Maybe we could just go for a walk off down the bush somewhere, mate. And this happened to Hercules. In Hercules' story, he literally is walking along, and he comes to a fork in the road, And on one side is just he's a simple sort of lady, his wife, you know, a future wife there, and then the other side is like a group of dancing girls, yeah, and he literally has to choose. That's one of his very first choices. So he actually makes the right choice, thank God. Later on, he makes less right choices, you know, but he has to make this choice. So this is indecision, and so it's all those other loves. It's all my love of the world, my love of food, my love of, you know. Of the senses, of lustful situations, of television, of movies, of the phone, of media, of work, all of it. And all those things, just to be crystal clear, can be enjoyed from the position of the esoteric path. Yeah? Food is enjoyable from the position of the esoteric path. Do you know what I mean? Maybe you have to eat a specific type of food because your body just gets sick. Well, so what? You can still enjoy the food. You can still go to Japan and enjoy beautiful, naturally gluten-free food. Do you know what I mean? Or, sorry?
Nothing.
Did you say or? Mate, our flights are booked. It's booked. 6th till 17th.
Oh.
No, mate, we're going on the retreat.
Oh, you're on the retreat.
You're on the retreat. Yeah, they offered us, they were very, very generous, and they offered us a deal I couldn't refuse on the kids. It was very cheap, very, very unbelievably cheap for us to bring the kids to the retreat. So we will go to the retreat in Japan, and then we will stay for another week in Osaka.
Okay.
Yeah, and the surrounds, Osaka, Kyoto, Nara. We're going to go to Himeji Castle and sort of stuff.
With this year or not?
Next year, May. Yeah, we have a international retreat in Japan. Sorry? Yeah. Otherwise, the next big time, the next cheap flight thing is in January.
Well,
Yeah, that's the next. Is that the return for free or something like that? I don't know. I didn't want to risk it. It was $320 each way, and I just grabbed it while it was cheap.
Oh, wow.
So it's cheap and going to Perth, mate. Anyway, so yeah, all of these things can be enjoyed. You can, as I said, if you find someone who you are truly in love with, that will actually, your whole life will be better because of that. Do you know what I mean? But this happens all the time. The man, the woman, they find themselves just finding someone who's, you know, that's fun, you know, or fulfills a certain desire, and that's not going to fulfill the life. Whereas a person finds their true complement. That I've said this quite a few times about my kids. Okay, yeah, I'd love it if my kids became Gnostics, but I said whether they become Gnostics or not, there's only one thing I want my kids to be clear on, which is to be able to find their complement, to actually be able to find the person who they are truly in love with. I want them to be able to know what true love is, recognize it, and be able to fulfill it. That's the only thing I want my kids to leave with. I don't care about anything else. They can have good work ethic, like one of my kids, or not have that, like my other kids. Do you know what I mean? But at the same time, I don't care. That one thing is the only thing that I want them to go home with. I don't care if they're Gnostics or not. If they become a Gnostic moralistically and unable to find their complement, then I don't want that for them, because they'll never get anywhere. How are you going to practice the alchemy unless you find the person you're really in love with? So that's the only thing I want them to walk home with. Take away from, other way around, to take away from the home, yeah, from their life with me. So in that sense, yeah, that's as I said, this can be, so the partner is actually everything. And that's why this is so important. This is a very, very important decision in this. It's the very beginning, and the first choice he makes is over, really, truly, it's between alchemy and fornication. That's the first choice. Yeah, and everything, if he chooses fornication, well, then the path's over. The tarot just ends right there. Number 6 done. Okay, it's to the abyss, to the abyss, to the abyss. Yeah. So instead, the first choice is to actually choose the path. And so she represents everything: the path, love, alchemy, matrimony, all this sort of stuff. And on the other side, we have the opposite of all that. Just, you know, what do you call it? Just, you know, floating around, having a good time, feeling good vibes, but not the path, you know what I mean? The path. Okay, so what I was talking about here too is, so I talked about beginning the path, but also sustaining the path. You start the path, and this is when it gets more difficult, because I remember actually talking to Raphael about this when I was younger. I remember saying, we were just chatting, and I said, starting the path is so hard, Raphael, it's so hard. I was like 17, 18. And he goes, no, my son. I believe that sustaining it is much harder. And at the time, I was just being silly. I'd already actually started. And he was right. It's so much more difficult over many, 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 many years to actually stay upon that path, because so many fascinating vistas open up on the sides, as we said. You know, we talked a lot about this in Tarot number 4 about the foundations. And so I come into the esoteric path and the esoteric work, and I'm interested in just having lots of spiritual sensations. I'm interested in having a really nice experiences in my meditations, and that's all I want. And so then, if I'm not getting all that, and if I'm not beginning to understand what the path is really, truly, that it's actually from me going back to the being, if I start thinking it's about me and just spiritual sensations, then I'm going to slowly be veering off it without even realizing. And then when something comes along and someone says, hey, look, I can show you the whole esoteric path. It's so easy. You've been trying so hard. But if you just take ayahuasca, then that's it. You don't need to do anything. The ayahuasca will do everything for you. Then suddenly, you know, in the early days where you would never have done that because you were actually looking at the being, now that I've twisted way off, I go, oh, yeah. Actually, I haven't had an experience in ages, you know? And I mean, Samael didn't say anything negative about ayahuasca, so why not? You know what I mean? Yeah, okay, I've seen people lose it, but whatever. So we end up veering off. And this happens all the time. I veer off. A lot of people veer off because they don't actually practice. I'd actually say this is probably the most common reason for people falling off the esoteric path is just lack of practice. Just straight up. You can be reading all the books, come in all the classes, listen to the guys who are practicing Gnosis, like Raphael Arape and my father and all this sort of stuff. But then you don't do the practice yourself. Ever. Like literally ever. Like you just never do them. You listen to them and you're like, oh, that's really good. But then I don't do them. And so then eventually I get bored because I'm not doing anything. Do you know what I mean? And then someone offers me something else. Oh, read this other book. Like I know this is, a lot of people leave the teachings and the path because of the fact that they start looking in another book. And there's like this whole subculture of people who call themselves occultists and hermeticists who just read old books. And that's all they do. They actually don't do anything else apart from read old books. And they get together and they fanboy out. It's actually mostly men, actually. And they talk about books. Did you read this book? It's Nicholas Flamel's. Yes, I read that book. Did you read this book? It's Raymond Lully. Oh, yes. That's fantastic. It's amazing. Have you read the other book about where Nicholas Flamel and Raymond Lully, even though they're not from the same time period, actually wrote a book together? But it wasn't actually them. It was actually another guy who just called himself Flamelli, and he's actually a completely different person, you know, but it's very hard to get, and they only printed 3 of them, and I happen to have 1 of them. And you can come into my house and you can just kind of look at it. You can't actually read it, you can just touch the cover. And then he goes, oh, that's ridiculous. And you get there and look at it and you go, wow, this is amazing. I never realized there was such a man as Flamelli. And he says, no, he wasn't. His actually name is Shostopus. And he was actually this poet from before Raymond Lully and before this guy and before this guy. And he knows everything. You know, and then you've got it, but really, but he was also a student of this guy, and it just keeps going. And all their books are like, and there's a bit of vanity, I've noticed this too. It's like, you know, if you've got like a book that, you know, those Amazon just spewed out printed books where the page number's halfway through the page, because they've just, you know what I'm talking about, just terrible books. If you got one of those, it's one thing, but then these guys are like trading these beautiful leather-bound, you know, 100-year-old books, really nice, and the smell, you know, and they get a book and go, you know, and they get into it. And I have seen an amazing amount of people leave the esoteric path because they just spent so much time looking for the truth in the book. The truth is the alchemy. That was the hidden truth in all the books, right? And Samael unveiled that. But it's like it's too upfront. I want to keep searching, you know, so I keep searching. Oh, this guy was this guy, this guy was this guy. I looked on an obscure site on the internet and I found that this guy was actually this guy. Oh my God, he had a 3rd pen name. Who would have known, you know? And he was actually doing this practice and he was doing this practice and that practice. Okay, but these guys never practice. I know these guys, they don't practice. I've been in their circles, I've taught them, I've gone and given lectures to them. They do not practice at all. They just read. That's it. The Theosophists do the same thing. They read, but there's no practice. I mentioned that before. I did a meditation with the Theosophists. I did 10 minutes and they were like gasping for air. At the end, they were like, that was a long one. No, it was a 15-minute meditation. That's right. And at 10 minutes, there was like people who were like getting up, like, ooh. You know, you can sit and read a book. It's amazing. You can sit without moving. These guys are amazing. They've got amazing intellects. They can sit without moving an inch and read 30 books back to back. But I asked them to do a 15-minute meditation, and they're like, oh, my sciatica. You know, and it's like, whoa. That's the ego, man. That's the ego in your body. It's like the same thing. I try to teach people Gnosis, right? I'm like, here, let's do a 15-minute, 20-minute meditation. And the body's like, you know, it's like dancing. You remember the devil? Dancing until there's holes in the shoes, you know? Like that, you know? I can't. I must dance. I have to get up. I have to dance. I can't sit down. I'm a free spirit, you know? And then you say, oh, how about you watch like a whole movie? And they're like, yeah, no problem. Sit there just completely without moving an inch. It was a great film. It was very emotional, wasn't it? Yeah, so you can sit through like an hour and a half without moving an inch. And I ask you to do a 20-minute meditation. You're like, no, I must dance. Yeah, that's the ego, man. That's the ego resisting the practice. And then people say, oh, I've got to lie down. I can only meditate standing on my head facing the east. You know, can I sit on my head facing the east in the class? Because the only way I can meditate. And it's like, no, man, what you need to do is just sit down and relax. Okay, so as I said, we sacrifice our other loves. This is how we eventually come to the true love, by dissolving the ego. So I'm not going to talk about balancing will and love. We already talked about that I think it was tarot card number 1 and number 2. We already talked about that. But there's a little bit of that as well, you know, obviously. Too much will and too much love. We know that. Too much love is to err on the side of desire. Too much will is to become full of ill will. Okay, so in here, the other part of number 6 is the 6-pointed star. Like that, the Star of David. And this represents the superior triangle actually dominating the inferior triangles. This represents the 3 primary forces actually bringing the 3 demons into control. Yeah, but that's a point on the esoteric path where that occurs. Samael says it also represents man and woman, that there are 6 protruding points, which are masculine, and then 6 points that go inwards, making it sort of 12 points by reverse, in and out, like that. And that represents man and woman. So this symbol is another alchemical symbol. It also represents the masculine and feminine coming together. So it's another symbol of the lingam yoni that we've talked about many, many weeks over and over again. So this is interesting that the Jewish people have this as their insignia, you know, this very powerful symbol, which represents, it's supposed to be just one triangle, which represents again the lingam yoni, the yod he vau he. Okay, so then wrapping it up, we have here the axiom, Lord, you give me works, but with them strength. I mean, that's pretty straightforward. That shows the fact that the being is in control of our process. Do you know what I mean? And it also shows you what's going to happen. If you choose this side here, it's not going to be easy. In fact, you are choosing a harder path. This is the easier path. Remember we talked a few weeks ago about like the guy who was like a trust fund baby who just had no muscular tension in his entire body. It's true. If you have good karma and you choose this path, everything will probably be quote unquote easy for you. If you have a lot of dharma, like a lot of good karma, you have a lot of good karma for that to work out. Like a whole lifetime of just spending. It's essentially, imagine being like, you know, a person says to you like, here, you know, you've got, okay, $1 million isn't worth much money anymore, is it? It used to be a lot back in the days. Here's $1 million. Like, deal or no deal just doesn't mean much anymore, does it? You know, the guy there, I saw it on when I was at the hospital. It's like, deal or no deal, you could win $200,000. Like, wow, I could win 1/6 of a house in the back burb somewhere. But, you know, so, yeah, I remember when Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? You know, I'm going to win $1 million. And so, yeah, so someone says to you, like, here, you could have, I don't know, what, $50 million or something. Here, you could have $50 million. Here you go, just take that. Or you could just reinvest it. Do you know what I mean? Like, here's $50 million. I can either reinvest it for you, or you can just take it and just blow it. You can just blow the family fortune, blow the family jewels, or you can reinvest it and it will look after you for lifetimes and, look after your family for generations, you know? And that's what it's like. We take it and we just blow it. And if we have a lot of good Dharma, this will seem fine for quite a long time. And a lot of people like that. Yeah, it's like we choose, you know, even this happens, a person spends their life looking for spirituality, finds the true spiritual teachings, and then gets the temptation to go back and then goes back. And for a while, everything will seem fine. Everything will seem fine. It'll be like, yep, everything's going well. Everything's turning up Millhouse, you know, everything's working out in my favor, etc. And then that karma starts to come. You know what I mean? The karma, because what you're actually spending is all the money your being has saved up for the path. The being has to pay for the path. Yeah, all of those initiations, all that process, the being pays for all of that. And the being could spend lifetimes preparing. You know, you spend a whole lifetime just as Jordanian monks, you know, just walking around in poverty so that you can prepare yourself for this one life where you can finally do it. You know, and instead we're like, oh, nah, I think I might just hit the piss. You know, just go out there and, you know, it'd be right. And what we do is we just spend it all. Just throw it all away. And in what? You know, in just life's various, what do you call them, like sensations. You know, it's quite funny because like in our society now, everyone, like God, everything's just godless now. There's no, I mean, there's a bit of research, but let's not go there. But generally speaking, it's like, you know, I get everything, but it has no meaning. Do you know what I mean? I can do everything, but for what? You know, I see these sorts of things sometimes. I see people doing these amazing things like, oh, you know, go on this big holiday, you know, and like, have you ever seen videos of like English people going on holidays? You know, like people from England? And they just go like, there's that, was it Ricky Gervais sends that guy, I forget his name now. Idiot Abroad, yeah. He sends that really just bland, ordinary, he made a whole TV show out of this guy just not,
Carl Pilkington?
Yeah, Carl Pilkington, just not enjoying the world. You know, and I've seen some marvelous meme culture come out of it, you know what I mean, about him just walking around everywhere. But like they'll send him to, you know, these, like they'll send him down the Nile. He's like, it's a bit hot, isn't it? Oh, fucking mosquitoes, bloody everywhere. It's horrible around here. He goes, what's that? What's that? Camel. You'll be a camel. Well, it looks like it's going to spit at me. And like, it's just, but if you ever see, even like a good thing, like, I remember, you know, there's all those TV shows about people just going on holidays. You know, they're just sort of these ABC style shows. Mm-hmm. You know, people just go on a holiday and they're like, oh yeah, yep, that's great. I like that. That's nice, isn't it? And they go for a walk and they're like, look at that view. Yeah, it's the view, isn't it? Oh yeah, it's the view. Out changing, man, won't it? Yeah. You know, and I've been up the lighthouse and I hear that exact conversation behind me all the time. You know, I was saying, like, oh, well, you really see a lot from up here, can't you? Yeah, that's quite a view, isn't it? Yeah, it is. Oh, you should do one of them panoramas. Yeah, right. Oi, Joe, get in the panorama. You know, I think you know, you just blurred you. You know, but like, what are you doing? Like, do you know, like, if you ever think about when you die, you're just going to sit there and be like, well, I mean, I saw a lot of stuff. Had some pretty good food. And,
watched a lot of Simpsons.
Yeah, I could quote all the Simpsons, you know, quite well, actually. And, what's the end goal? Do you know what I mean? Did he who dies with the most experience wins? Are you not going to feel a little bit like, why was I here? Like, what was my purpose in life? Do you know what I mean? Why did I live? Why did you know, when you went to that ancient rich on the Balinese island, why do they do that? What was the reason behind that? They didn't just do it so some tourists go, oh, that's pretty neat, isn't it? That's neat what they do there with the flags and that. That's nice. That is. It looked lovely. Really enjoyed that. You know, why did they do it? What was the reason? What was the heart and soul behind it? Where was the being? Where was the truth? You know, that's what you really want on the end on the edge of your deathbed. You want to be meditating to enter back into into samadhi, to die consciously, to be aware of yourself at the moment of death. You know, and so that's like the goal. That's why for the Buddhists, like the whole life is about preparing for your death, because it's the most important point. And we don't know about the eternity beyond, truly. Maybe we've had some internal experiences, maybe we do have a little bit of knowledge inside. But just all these experiences are never going to take us anywhere. So what I'm trying to say is choosing this path may not be the easy path. In fact, most of the time it's not the easy path. I'm not saying that by choosing, remember I talked about finding, just because you have the perfect love, you find the perfect love of your life doesn't mean she's going to be easy. You know what I mean? She could tell you off every day for the rest of your life. You know what I mean? And you could be a man, work on yourself, die, and be fine. Have you ever seen my parents? Have you ever met Sean or Rochelle? You know what I mean? You know what's funny is women who meet my father will say, wow, how does she deal with him? And men who meet my mother, my stepmother, Rochelle will go, wow, how does he deal with her? You know what I mean? Life with them seems like they're trying to kill each other every day. But at the same time, when you know them deeply, they're completely in love and they're completely united on their stoic path. It's so obvious. They have chosen the path. And it was difficult for them. Getting together was a hard situation. She had difficult things with the kids, etc. And my father had to change a lot inside of himself as living as a messy bachelor to living with a very sort of together Virgo. There was a huge divide when that happened. You know what I mean? But all that sort of stuff, and me in the equation too, I was a problem. And so all of that, right, was choosing this path. And they've always chosen that path. So it is often it is almost always the higher road, let's be honest, you know what I mean? But it will provide meaning because this is the path that takes you to the being. This is the path that will give you feelings of the being. But of course, there's going to be moments of feeling where you're stuck down here in this, in this mire of life and everything. And there's going to be moments of thinking like, oh my God, what am I doing? How am I going to get out of this? And you look back sometimes and then you see the Medusa again. And she's like, it's nice over here in Duff World. You know what I mean? Maybe I could read your palm and we could do a little chakra workshop together and, get it all frisky. It's fine. Just for one night, right? And all this sort of stuff. And you look over and you go, oh, that's, that was all right. I was happy over there, wasn't I? When you're stuck in the mires, you forget that, as you get closer. Like, have you guys ever seen it's a Swedish film called Asklad?
Yeah. It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's based on mythology. You should watch it. It's great. It might be on SBS still. I don't know. Asklad. A-S-K.
Ashladen, is it?
Ashlad?
Yeah, something like that.
You're going to have to look it up. I can't remember how to I can't even remember how to write it because it's bloody Swedish.
I think Chris recommended that.
I think it's like that.
Really
I think it's like that. Ashlad. Or Asklad, I can't remember. You'll have to look it up. But it's Swedish fairy tale. So once you find it, the fact it's a Swedish fairy tale make it obvious because there's not very many movies. But there's a bit in that where he goes, he gets tempted, and it's such an interesting moment when he gets tempted because he gets tempted by all these women. They're like beautiful naked women with apples, golden apples. And they're like, here, have some of these beautiful golden apples. And his friends, I think his brothers it is, actually fall to these things, but he can actually see what they're really like.
There's just this moment where it like flickers and he's
yeah. He's sitting at the table and they're like, here, have these beautiful apples, have these other. And then it flickers for a moment, because it's like they're saying, don't worry about your quest, because it's a very, mythological fairy tale. It's beautiful. But there's a bit where, he's sitting at the table, said, here, enjoy these beautiful apples, aren't they lovely? And then he's like sitting there, he's looking at them, and there's something off, he can't tell, and suddenly his eyes just flicker, and he sees reality for a second, and they're all like these old witches, like that. They're all like, got their like long claws, and like, they're like their tongues on his friends, like, because they're going to eat them, and like
worms and maggots.
All the apples are full of worms and maggots, and his friends are going, and there's like worms coming out of their mouths, and he's just like, oh God, and he sees the reality of what's actually going on. He sees this, the reality of what these people are actually eating, and he's like, oh my God, and if you've been there and you've experienced it with the consciousness, you'll understand that completely. When someone's actually consciously live that life, they see what it's really about. So the axiom here is, Lord, you give me works, but with them strength. So the being won't be giving us, the being's not going to give us a perfect,
Situation.
yeah, like a trust fund. The being's going to go, here you go. Oh, you've chosen me now. So now everything's perfect. Welcome to the joyful thing. Everything's perfect over here, Or is it makes you little, what's it called? Making you little drinks, making you little cocktails on the beach. He's giving you, what is it? And he says, here, put on these nice little linen shorts, and sit by the beach. It's going to be okay. The being's not like that at all, yeah? Instead, you're there sitting on the cold sands of rocky sands of a English beach. The water's just full of putrescence. And so he gives you works, but he gives you the strength in order to do them as well. And that's what's so beautiful about it. It's like when you choose the path, when you choose the being will give us tests, but with them the strength to overcome them. The being never gives us a test without at least the strength to overcome it or at least understand it. Some tests, of course, are to fail. You have to always remember that. Otherwise, you're going to struggle. A lot of people suffer. They fail some tests internally and they're like, that's it, I'm a bad Gnostic. Bad Gnostic, I can't do the Gnosis, it's too hard. When the reality is you actually learn from the failure. Yeah? Like in that beautiful movie, The Circle of Iron, Silent Flute, when he gets tested, his lust gets tested. He's a celibate man, and then he goes out and Chang Sha meets him in the desert and he gives him the desert rose, which is the beautiful woman. She says, well, let me walk in the palm of let me walk upon your fate line with you for a little bit. It's just one night. And he sleeps with her, and then next time he wakes up and Chang Sha's crucified her. And he's like, no! He's crying, oh. But then when he goes and talks to his master, this is the movie Bruce Lee wrote, when he goes and talks to his master, he's understood it. And his master says, so what happened in the desert? And he said, it wasn't a test, it was a lesson. He goes, I realized that I actually do need to love. But because he was just like running away from his sexuality. He said, no, loving is good, but when you grasp, when you hold too tightly, you destroy what you love. And he understood that he was actually him. That's when when he meets Chang Sha at the end, Chang Sha says, oh, how you going? He goes, and it's good. And he says, he goes, like, basically, have you gotten over it? And he goes, yes. And he goes, but did I not kill her with these two hands? And Cord says, no, I killed her with these two hands. Because he realized that it was his own desire that led to her death, not Chang Sha. Chang Sha was just a part of the being. He's the Lucifer.
What's the name of the movie?
The movie's called The Circle of Iron. Yeah. It's we'll watch it at a retreat sometime. We watch that one at the retreat all the time because it's really good. Circle of Iron. It's often renamed The Silent Flute. It's made in the 70s, and Bruce Lee wrote it, but it never got made. It was the movie he wanted to make, and he was supposed to be the guru, but then he was supposed to do it with David Carradine, but when he came to the West, he sort of lost himself to pride and vanity, and it's a shame because he sort of lost the man he was supposed to be. And then so when David Carradine called him and said, I finally got someone to actually do it, well, it didn't get made until after his death, and it was like a very, very B-grade film, but it is a banger. It's a beautiful, beautiful Gnostic film. So the being gives us tests, but with them the strength in order to overcome them. And this strengthens our character. This is fantastic. So in prediction, it's interesting because I love this. This has got to have the most false backing of any of the cards. I love it. When you read the back of the card, it says, the lovers, victory, good luck. And it is without a doubt completely incorrect. I have never seen that to be the case with this card. Almost never. It can be. This is technically an alchemical card. And it is the lovers, so it can represent a good relationship, of course. But most of the time, it represents temptation, definition, choice, and very much in situations of relationships, is usually what it pertains to.
Where does the stuff from the back actually come from?
Samael himself, it's in the book.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. It's in the book, because it's in Ian Watchorn's book. If it's in Ian Watchorn's book, it has not been added.
Okay.
That's how you know.
So on the back of the card, that's Samael.
That's Samael.
Okay.
And I have no idea why he wrote that, because I got to be honest with you, I have never seen that to be the case in any. So the top part of the back of the card come from from Samael directly. All that other stuff on our ones, that comes from various people who sort of talk with him over time. Like people took a whole bunch of notes and everything. That's what all that is. Right. So that's like him having said it at this time, or in Dream Yoga, or in this someone. So people have written all that down. Like, so every time because he obviously, you know, Samael was around for a long time. And if you listen to his lectures were very short. So he spent a really large amount of time just with people. You sort of don't realize that until you actually start looking at it. Samael's lectures were at most 40 minutes, right? And then his conferences lasted for days. And he spent whole weeks in places. So what was he doing? He was just with people. He spent huge amounts of time one-on-one. Not to mention, obviously, not every single... Recordings weren't so common in the 70s and 60s. So not a lot of stuff was recorded. But so a lot of this extra stuff written on there is just from in readings he did for people. Like as in they would say, oh, Master, I did, and what do you think? And he would tell them. That's what all that extra stuff is. But the top part is in the book.
The axiom.
Not just, the axiom, but also the bit where it says like magician, man, sword, willpower. That was Samael directly. Okay. He put all of that in the book. Oh, cool. And so if you're ever looking for that just straight definition, no one's mucked with it, that's the one. It's in the book, if you know what I mean.
So how come it's such a contradiction?
What do you mean? I don't know. I mean, I just don't know, because honestly, every time that I've read this, like done readings for people, I've just never seen tarot card number 6 to be a positive card. Listen to it. It's all about temptation and definition. But I mean, I guess the card is supposed to be the Lovers. Like in the standard Rider-Waite tarot, it is very much a... it's a Rider-Waite is considered a very positive card.
If there's a reading and that card comes up, maybe they're just facing a choice.
Yes, that's true. I agree.
It may not make a negative choice, you know.
That's true. I agree. But 9 times out of 10 when I see this, it's a negative choice. It's right there.
It could be even like strengthening the person that needs to make the choice to...
Oh, it definitely is.
You know,
but like when you get the reading and you see the reading, like if a guy, let's say a young Gnostic man, he does the tarot, he sees the woman and she's beautiful. And he goes, that's it. I'm reading the tarot. And he throws the cards down.
The Lovers.
And then he gets the Lovers, and it's not usually, it's like lust. If he gets 19, good. You know what I mean? It means like, yep. 15's never good. 15's the Baphomet, it's the devil. 15's the devil. 14's just confusing. When you get 14, you're like, it's like, I really like this woman. What do you think? 14. It's like, so.
Take it easy.
14 usually means, there's like potential, but you got to slow down. Do you know what I mean? It just depends on the thing. But
and depending as well on the other cards.
Of course. Yeah, it can be a positive in the reading. I mean, the problem with the Egyptian tarot is it's almost never negative or positive. It's always like kind of, it's very, I don't want to use the word loose.
Situation.
Yeah, but it's also, it allows the person it allows the consciousness to sort of interpret and understand. Do you know what I mean? And so that's why, I say, but if I read the back and it says victory, good luck, I look at it and go, oh, okay, so everything's going well. But in reality, it's more like, good luck, mate. Like, as in you better watch yourself because, and the luck be on your side rather than, yes, go out there, take the woman out. This is definitely what you want to do. It's usually more like, whoa, slow down. You know what I mean? This situation's probably not great. You got to be careful. Often it can be a situation where it's like, because I've seen it very often, like a guy's very interested in a young girl or something, but then you can see when you do the reading that she may be interested in him as well, but he's quite serious about like an esoteric path or something, and she's not. Do you know what I mean? So even though they have like a good connection, if they get together, she's going to take him out. Yeah. She's going to ruin it. So it's not. So in that sense, she's more this one.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I mean? But I'm saying whenever I see it read, it's rarely that when someone's doing this reading that they get this one when it's like, oh, look, the person's right there. Yeah. It's usually saying, careful.
Yeah.
Usually.
Yeah, mostly because like how I see is like the foot there is indicating to go to the right. But
that's right.
It's kind of, he just had a moment of like, ooh.
But he's confused, yeah.
Yeah, got confused. And when you are in a fork as well, this is calling in for you to weigh out the things, like if I go this way, if I go that way. So just to take a moment.
Yeah,
You know, so
that's
it makes
right.
sense.
That's right. But it's just funny because you read the card, victory, good luck. And it's like, it makes you feel like you shouldn't wait, just go straight for the thing, you know?
Yeah.
But in reality, it's like,
Yeah.
slow down, careful, careful.
Yeah, 'cause
But it's still-
even indecision is a
But
indecision is a big word to be there. You know, like what do you do when you are indecisive?
yeah,
You stop and put on the table. You know, like oh this happened and this happened. What I do?
exactly. Look very, and that's funny because usually, as I said, when this tarot card comes up in prediction, I find often the person isn't really properly weighing things up. What they're doing is like, wow, you know, this person, it's always young men giving me the tarot card.
Yeah.
And it's usually, and they're like, and wow, this lady, she's perfect. You know what I mean? She's got everything I need in a Gnostic woman. She's attractive.
Yeah. And how is it the weight of the feather and the heart?
Yeah, exactly. And then I look at them and go, careful. The entire force of karma is aiming at that woman's head. So you be careful. You know, you need to be very careful because everything is aiming at that person. And if you make that mistake, wah!
Yeah, true.
And I see that all the time. But it can be so hard, you know, because you can see like the people, like as an example, I know a person who's in a difficult situation, you're like, where it was like that person was they definitely had a very good connection, you know. And then, but it was like, you know, she didn't really like him coming to Gnosis very much. You know, she didn't really like it. You know, and then, you know, he sort of like pulled back a little bit with her, and then they sort of had this little argument. They weren't sure. They were together for a long time, though, but they were deciding to get married. And so it's a big commitment to sort of go from that next level. And it was interesting, but like in the end, and he got this card in readings too, but she was definitely like a person he could do the work with easily. They're still together, they still practice alchemy to this day. But it was interesting, he really wanted to go further. He wanted to be a missionary and like go teach abroad even. This is what he was planning. And then he ended up, instead of like them coming together, there was a compromise. And it was like, she was like, okay, I won't complain about Gnosis stuff at all as long as you lose the sexual energy with me and have a kid. Do you know what I mean? Like, and she, it's like they made a compromise. So he compromises his Gnostic work, and then she allows him to have his Gnostic work. Do you see what I mean? And really, he should have just said, no, I'm 100% for this. I don't want to do this, la-di-da-di-da. I've made up my mind. We can do the Kriya Shakti to have a child in a special Gnostic technique, which works. But it's interesting, you know, it's like, if he'd have stuck to his guns, she would have had to like pull across to his side. Do you see what I mean? Instead of being a temptation out. Like if he tomorrow said, I'm done with this, she'd be like, great. Do you know what I mean? She comes along, but she doesn't really care. Like, but if he had stuck to his guns and like said, no, this is like the rest of my life, then she would have had to make a decision to be like with him. And what was interesting is from that time when he made that, let's say, he made that little bit of a compromise, their relationship instantly was like that. Do you know what I mean? He compromised himself, and then what he ended up doing is he ended up walking over to her side a bit. And so from then on, suddenly we don't see him so much. He still comes, but he's just like, he's not serious anymore. You know, all his friends went on to become international missionaries. They all left the country. You know what I mean? And he stayed and kind of, you know, they had the kid. The kid ended up being a nightmare. It turns out she said, I want to have 3-4 kids. She had one kid. Oh, I don't want to have another kid. Mm-hmm. Yeah, careful what you wish for, you know. And so, you know, so he made, if he had a, so I'm just trying to say, it's not necessarily always a choice between like one person and another person. In that situation, he should have stuck to his guns because this is fornication and this is the alchemy. And if he'd have stuck to his guns about the alchemy, no, I'm going to do the alchemy no matter what, she would have had to walk over to his side in order to stay with him. And instead they made this little compromise, and from then on in, everything's always been messy. It's always been messy with them, you know, like, oh, I can't come to this, oh, I can't come to class, I can't come to the mass, etc., etc. And yeah, so and it's interesting, he actually chose indecision because he slightly compromised himself, you know, to do that. And it's messy, you know, oh, just a little bit. You know, it's like, just to give a last example, then we'll finish up, but, you know, it kind of reminds me of, you know, like government politics, where they say, you know, like you become a politician. You say, I'm going to become a politician. I'm going to change the government for the better. Yeah. But then to get there, you need to have money. And to have money, you're probably going to have to bow to people you don't want to bow to just a little bit to get there. Do you know what I mean? So you say, no. So like you start off and you say, like, I knew a guy like that. He was a lawyer. He was studying to be a lawyer. He was Chilean. He had long hair, like to here. And he used to play the pan pipes and the guitar like that. And he had the shaky thing, you know, in the town. And he got together with this other girl who was also in his law class. And I remember that he said, I want to become a lawyer because I want to free the people. I want to free the people. And he had this long hair, you know, like that. I'm going to free the people, you know. And he got together with this woman, and she was from like upper class parents, good money, nice job. And she used to come and she used to dance with him, you know what I mean? She'd dance like that. She'd dance and he'd be like, do, like that. And then I remember my father said, when they got together, my father said, he's finished. And then I said, why would you say that? My father's quite harsh. I was like, why would you say that? He goes, he's finished. He goes, why? He said, because that woman's going to ruin him. He said, because she's actually from a rich family and she likes his rebellion. You know, he has the long hair, you know, he's really tall, strong guy. Has a beautiful ethics, you know, I'm going to change the world, you know. And he said, nah. He goes, she's going to have him married and working in a law office for the rest of his life, doing something he doesn't want to do. And it's true. We saw him 6 years later and he was just working a standard law. All his hair, gone. It was like he had like the slicked back, nice lawyer haircut. Do you know what I mean? And we said, I can't remember his name now. He goes, are you working in human rights? He's like, no, he's like a divorce lawyer or something. And it was like, and she just sucked it out of him. She just ruined him completely, you know. But it was like it was always little things, and it was always little things. He was coming to the class, and he always talked so big. He was a Sagittarian. He was really tall, big, broad, loud guy, you know. And he was just like, yeah, I'm going to change the world. I'm going to set the people free. You know? I mean, I'm learning, this is in the 90s. I'm learning law to free the people, you know. And as she was in love with, they were both in love with the same thing, him. But the problem is eventually over time, you know, all of those egos from her upbringing of being rich and all this sort of stuff and wanting to be stable, you know, then she got pregnant, so then, we got to be stable. So he took the job he never wanted to take, you know, he took the sellout lawyer job, you know, before you know it. And then, you know, she couldn't work, you know, even though she was a lawyer as well. And then later, but then she said, no, it's okay, I'll put the kids in intervention and I'll get it working. We need to buy a house now. And I remember my father talked to me. He said, what happened to traveling all over the world and doing legal rights, you know, for the people? And he goes, man, Sean, it's hard, you know, like we need to have a house. We have to pay off the house, and, you know, we got another kid on the way, and you're all right. Our parents don't want us to do that. And it was just like, my dad was like, oh God, you know? So yes, it's not always a choice between one and the other. It can always, sometimes it can be a choice within yourself. If he'd have stuck to his guns and she really loved him, she would have gone with him. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? She would have gone with him anyway. But he has to first change inside himself. You know what's going to be horrible? He's going to hit 40 and he's going to go around telling everyone she ruined my life. No, he ruined his life. He ruined his life, because if he'd have stuck to his guns, it would have been fine. She would have probably followed him all over. Hopefully she'd followed him all over the world. She would have followed him all over the world, and they would have done human rights, and they would have just dealt. They could have still had 2 kids in tow flying around bloody helping people's human rights, because that, you find that kids just follow after a while, don't they, Ellie? They just go where the parents go. You know, either they like it or not, eh? Sometimes it's the beach, and other times it's just the shops. It's a hard life. So yeah. Anyway, interesting, isn't it? Definition. But the worst bit is it never stops. The problem with this one is it never stops. So my last point, I had this internal experience once that balance doesn't mean to be between 2 options, but to be at the center of the option you've chosen. We often have this idea of balance being like this, you know, like I'm like that, when in reality, the force of the balance actually comes from the center. See here? This is the balance here, this point. We're not here and not here. And we always see this as a balance, when in reality, Balance is actually caused by momentum and by movement. You maintain balance by going forwards. And when you stop and spend your time going like this, you end up actually falling over. So in reality, balance is actually to be at the center of the option you've chosen, yeah? Sorry, that's Raphael. I'm confusing another I had a teaching of serenity. That comes from Raphael. And so your balance isn't to be between two options. It's to be at the center of the option that you have chosen. So I make a decision for the path, and then everything else just has to revolve around the path. The kids just come along. The money just has to work it out. The job just has to work it out. Sometimes the job doesn't work. Okay, get another job. And I'm at the center of the option I've chosen. And what will happen is you're going to find that things are going to constantly attack that center. Constantly. Money, life, problems, issues, society, social norms, all of your egos, just the whole lot of them. You know, every single ego you have is just going to complain that you're putting all your eggs in one basket. Yeah. So we often call this card definition, because that's what it's about defining our life more and more and more for one point, one choice. I never forget what Raphael said. I think it's so cool. He said, you can either do one thing or you can do a million other things. And as an Aquarian, I get that so well, because I always want to do a million things. Every time I do one thing, I'm always feeling like I should be doing something else. Like while I'm doing like something necessary, like cooking or at work, I'm thinking like, maybe I should put some headphones in and be like micro-learning at the same time. You know, even though that's ridiculous, because that's actually dividing the consciousness, and that's insane. But you know what I mean, right? In reality, we can do a million things. We can go off, and it's like the whole world. There's so much to do out there, you know? Or we could just do one thing really well, and that's the path. That's what that one thing is. Yeah? Not like and those people who just get like insanely good at doing is it calisthenics or something. Not that. You know, you can push up with one arm. No. There's a million things you can do. Yeah. Whew. Good? Thought about? Any questions? Okay. Do a wee practice, shall we?